Welcome, everybody, to episode 19, Rules of the Arena. Just want to get some housekeeping stuff out of the way right now. Thank you for all of you that are listening on iTunes. I've had a lot of good feedback come back from that. I just need you to do me a huge favor. Pull out your phone unless you're driving. Don't do that. And open up your iTunes app, go to Rules of the Arena page, and I need you to give me a 5-star review on there. It's going to really help me out. It keeps, allows me to kind of pop farther up on the list there. And if you are driving when you get there, or just go and pull over on the side of the road and give me a 5-star review. If it's not a 5-star worthy, shoot me an email, roapodcastinfo@gmail.com, and tell me why you don't like it, and I will do my best to fix it or ignore you. 50-50 shot. For everybody listening right now, thank you for tuning in. Today we're sitting down with Joe, and this episode is brought to you by Blind Ninja Studios. If you haven't listened to any other shows, you should really go check that out. We just recorded Department of Defense. You can check that out live on Twitch at 6 p.m. on Sundays. They also have Homebrew Bound, which I have listened to religiously for the last 3 months. I've listened to the past 4 years worth of episodes.
I'm so sorry, man.
I learned a lot. If you're looking at brewing ever, or maybe you're homebrewing already, I highly recommend that. If you're, and as as the intro puts it, it's a show dedicated to helping you make the best beer possible. I can agree with that. If you're a bit of a nerd like I am, Legends of Lothos, if you're into tabletop gaming, it's a lot of fun to listen to, and kind of makes up for the lack of gaming I've been able to do in the last 6 months.
Comes back the 28th of this month.
Perfect. And if you're a big music fan, you can also check out Soundwave with Matt and Carlos, where they talk about kind of different musical topics every week, and that comes out on Mondays? Thursdays, I'm sorry.
Actually, same day as ROA.
Oh, perfect. See, there you go. 2 shows, 1 day. And today, I'm joined always with my co-host, Grandpa Ben.
Back in my day.
And super producer, Casey.
Oh, hey.
I just want to throw out a big thank you to him. As I was describing the show the other day to somebody, he has been putting up with me for the last month and a half or so of being like the 5-year-old in the back seat of the station wagon on a long road trip going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
I have a good trainer in Frederickson, so...
And today, like I said, we are sitting down with Joe, owner of All Points North Consulting, a local security consulting firm. Joe's a retired FBI agent, former teacher, and has a degree in pastoral studies. Joe, why don't you just kind of tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Started out with a pastoral studies degree, and my wife and I were ministers for 7 years, a lot of different settings, and school teacher for 2 years, and then worked with brain injury survivors for 4 years and picked up a master's in psychology. At that point, needed to make a living. Had 2 kids at home. Needed to make a living, started looking around for a new job, and found a brochure that talked about the FBI. Saw the list of what you needed to be in it. Thought, I meet all these. I applied for 40 other jobs, so why not try another one?
Sure.
Talked to my uncle. I met him once, distant uncle, and he was a retired FBI agent. Says, best job ever. Talked to my brother's landlord, retired FBI agent. Says, best job ever. I got subpoenaed by the FBI at the same time. As it would happen, for some medical records from our business, and talked to that agent, said it was a great job. So kind of got the message there. We went home, talked to my wife, and said, why not? And she said, you'll never get in. I said, I'll never get in, but why not? So we threw the application in, and 6 months later, it's at Quantico. And then spent 20 years with the FBI. First 2 years in Southern Illinois, small office, doing every kind of work that the Bureau does. And then the last 18 years, I was in Minneapolis. 7 years doing white-collar crime as a case agent, a couple years white supremacy work, domestic terrorism, 4 years of child prostitution cases. And then the last 4 years, as it happens in many businesses, including the government businesses, I got voluntold into being the training coordinator. And so when the bosses said, you should do training, I said, great idea, boss. And actually it was good. I enjoyed doing it. And that's right when Sandy Hook hit. So as soon as I took the job, everyone wanted active shooter. And so we kind of shifted, and I still did internal training and other things too, but did a lot of active shooter presentations for the community. Did 230 of them in 4 years while I was there. Retired about a year and a half ago. I always promised my wife I'd retire when I could. And then started this business because I still wanted to make more people safe. And it seems like there's a need out there. So now speak to any group that will have me about, a number of different things. So I do how to avoid and survive violence is what most people want to hear about. But I also do active listening skills as a negotiator for about 5 years, and those skills that can work in a lot of different situations. Psychological first aid, how to deal with trauma before, during, and after the fact. Work with banks on what to do before, during, after bank robberies. Worked a number of bank robberies. And just as a hint out there, don't rob a bank. It's really stupid. It's not a good idea. You will get caught.
Wait, are you saying it's not the 1880s anymore?
No. People keep doing it. So I don't get it.
The James Younger man can't do it.
I didn't mind working on bank robberies. It was kind of fun, but not a good way to make a living. And so whatever people need, I'll do. I also do a lot of tabletop exercises where you'll go to a business or organization and work with them to come up with what potential problems they may encounter, and then challenge those in a group setting, and having local law enforcement involved, EMS, or whoever would be responding, and work together to try and figure out the best policies ahead of time. Did some full-scale exercises with different groups. So pretty much what everybody needs to be safer. And the reason I do this is because we live in a world surrounded by people who want to hurt us. And almost everybody agrees with me, but I do a lot of college work. And I had a professor, pipe up one time when I was talking recently and disagreed with me about the evil in the world. But I don't know. I say watch the news and then come back and talk to me. But we're surrounded by folks that want to do us harm. And the way to have safety is to apply wisdom. And there's a lot of wisdom out there that have been learned by many people over many years. And you can take from different areas. And if you apply that wisdom to your life, individually or to group settings, everybody's going to be dramatically safer. So that's what I'm about now.
And with, you said you do like the tabletop settings, is that basically they lay out their floor plan, or how does that work if you're working with a client on that?
No, it's more about finding out what the potential problems are. And then so you'd sit at a table. So the leaders would come up with a list of problems, like suspicious package, or if somebody's spotted with a gun in the parking lot, if somebody's getting aggressive with the front desk staff. So whatever these different scenarios would be. And so I'd have everybody sit at a table, and then as a leader of the tabletop, I would put out the presentation and say, here's what just happened, what are you going to do about it? And then people start piping in and giving suggestions, and we kind of work together to see. And the interesting thing is, what you find a lot of time is that people don't feel they have enough authority to do something. So people don't have enough authority to start the first responders or to reach out. And so you start finding out where the weaknesses are. And also you can find out where policies should be changed to be more accurate with reality. Because if local law enforcement would be in a situation like that, they'll a lot of times say, whoa, no, that's not what's going to happen. Here's what really will happen, and here's how we'll be responding. So it tends to make it help people think ahead of time. And I'm a big believer in motor memory, that the best way to be safe is you lock some things in ahead of time. And that's one of the first steps to having good motor memory, is to work through these problems together. So that's been really helpful, I think, for groups. And I worked with a number of different businesses, big buildings downtown, hospitals, where we do these, and they start changing their policies based on weaknesses that they pick up. So I don't know the weaknesses, but they do. And then I just kind of guide them through it.
So when you say motor memory, are you talking about like drills actually running through scenarios, and like I have to go to the phone, or I can talk actually into my microphone? Thanks, Casey. Or could you just elaborate on more what that is?
Yeah, and that can be helpful. Actually, getting up and walking through something is phenomenal, but even just thinking through something ahead of time. So it's all about locking things in ahead of time, because that's what you're going to default to. Because I like to teach people that everybody's going to be in crises in their life, and everybody's going to, you have been, and you will be. It's just part of living. And you can do one of three things when you're in a crisis. You're going to freeze, you're going to panic, or you're going to do something productive. And the only way to do something productive is to lock some things in motor memory. I mean, there's some people that just have that innate. Most people don't. Most people will freeze or panic. So to fight that, you lock in some good principles ahead of time. To your point, one thing I did recently with there was a college with a particular threat. I was working with them, and we went through each area in the college. So, admin area, or the area that deals with the students or these different wings of the building, and we'd sit down with them and figure out, okay, if there's a problem erupted, what are you going to do? How do you get out? And then they walk through it together, and they start working together and coming up with like, oh, this window will open well, or this window would be great, but it doesn't open well. Let's get maintenance in here to fix that, or this is the best way out. And one of the things we found there, which I think a lot of businesses have, is that the people most in danger are the front desk staff, which are either the newest person or the oldest person or something like that, because they're going to bear the brunt of things. And when the managers and people with offices are gone, they tend to lock their offices, and a lot of times that's the safest place for somebody to go, but they don't have access to that. So this college changed that, where they're going to lock up the materials that can't be seen publicly into file cabinets and leave the doors open, so that those front desk staff have a place to egress to in case there's a problem out in the hallway.
No, when you're meeting with a college or school for the first time, I mean, how many times do you find that they have, the problems, if you will, or situations already kind of mapped out? Like, well, we thought about an active shooter, we thought about this or that or the other thing, or how much, when you're having those tabletop meetings, how much do you have to kind of say, here are some common situations, what do you do? Yeah.
I think the nice thing now, I don't know if it's nice or not, but there's so much press out there about it, is everybody's thinking about it, and organizations are thinking about it, which is great. But it's more guiding that thought into more productive, and using that wisdom that other people found, and how do you save lives. And what you look at too is statistically, what do you have to expect? And chances are, what you're going to have is one guy. If you look at the numbers, it's going to be a guy, and it's going to be one person alone. Sometimes there's two, like Columbine, but that's extremely rare. And you're not going to have more than two. So your threat is one person that's in the building with you, either trying to kill or wound or whatever a particular target, or as many people as possible. So if that's your threat, don't hang out in the building with them. So that teaches us that we need to run. And then the old school thought, like with K-12 schools, where I still get some pushback from, is that shelter in place was the best response, or lockdown, whatever you want to call it. When actually you take run, which is the best response, away from the teachers and away from the staff to be able to guide the students out, if at all possible. So looking at what happened in the past will guide us to what we can expect in the future. And we need to plan, because the problem is these folks learn from each other, right? So now, because people have a success with vehicles running people over, that's something we need to consider. And people will keep learning from past. And IEDs is another one. We see a lot of that, and people learn from what's happened in the past there. So that will guide us as we come up with plans together with an organization.
So you deal a lot with egress. Do you deal at all with like the ingress of people? Like, do you work on security for, like, do you look at, like, I guess perimeter security, like how people are getting into the building or anything like that?
Right, and I'll work with, depends on the group, whatever they need. But sometimes, for example, when you work with the group, there's three things you have to balance out. It's openness, budget, and security. So somehow you have to balance all that out, because you have to be
You get two, but not three.
Right, and then security usually doesn't get the priority. So, but somewhere in that mix, you have to figure it out. And I was just working with a particular business that has the public come in often. So I did some training for the staff, and then we walked around the building, just came up with ideas together how to make it a little safer. And some of that was finding ways for people to get out. And then, some of it was, if you have the budget in future years, maybe you want to buzz people in or put cameras here. Things you could do to make it better and plan ahead for that. But I think the best way to save lives is to train staff, because you will never stop everybody. Because your threats are internal also. So your threats are a combination of folks from the outside and inside. And so for those internal threats, they're there with you and they have the keys to the kingdom. But if everybody on the staff is trained how to best survive, the body counts drop. And so that's what my biggest push is, trying to train as many people as possible in some basic principles. And once again, this motor memory. We're going to lock in some motor memory things for folks to keep them safe.
And
Productive comment, Gordon.
The thought, just if you looked, you could see the curtain move it right up the stairs there.
So when I was in school, all of the windows, like did not open
Right.
completely. And so the only egress option was the door, which we were trained to, because, I mean, when I was in high school, it was just after Columbine. And so it
God, you're
was, you shut the door, you lock it, and you hide behind your desk that has no cover. Like, because it's just, like, just
Right.
duck under your, it's duck and cover, like, kiss your ass goodbye. Like,
For Micah Desktop, it's bulletproof.
yeah.
Well, I had a...
So,
Whoops, sorry.
like, in a building like that, like, what are the egress options?
Well, what you got, never take run away, because maybe you can have some information, the shootings in the cafeteria, and you're close enough to exit door to push people out and get as many people out as possible.
Okay.
So you always take run as your first option, and sometimes you don't have that option. It is what it is. But you should know ahead of time how you're barricading that door. So the first time you think about it, it should be when there's a problem. So you should have things prepared. And there's lots of easy ways to barricade doors, especially doors that open inward. So there's all sorts of things you can do. Or maybe have heavy items you can move in front, but you prepare ahead of time. But then if you're stuck in that room, you don't just wait then. What you do at that point is you spread people out, but you encourage people to fight back. Because there's no downside to fighting. Because once the bad guy is in the room with you, you're not too nice to shoot, and you can't talk your way out of it. It is what it is. And so that's when everybody brings violence to the person that's coming in on them. And that's the best way. And one teacher I heard an idea, which I thought was brilliant, was they had students didn't know this, but they have a crate of rocks, like hand-sized rocks. And so if that ever happened, they would pass it out to the students. It must have been an older class, but they'd pass it out to the students and say, if the bad guy comes to the room, we're all throwing rocks. And how devastating would that be? And then you're moving and you're yelling, you're creating chaos. You don't cluster together on the far side of the room or in the corner. You spread out, you get aggressive, you get ready to fight. And you pre-position weapons that you know are weapons, but the bad guy doesn't. Fire extinguishers, some of the best weapons out there.
I mean, textbooks seem great.
Yeah.
They're heavy.
There you go. And now it's all laptops, right? Everybody has a
Right? Yeah,
laptop.
no. Chuck a MacBook at them. They have sharp edges.
Well, I remember being in high school, I had a teacher, he would request a classroom with a window every year, and the school would deny him. The reason we wanted to do that is because he had like 5 or 6 rope ladders, and he still kept them in there if anything were to happen. But he had a 5-inch steel plate that stood over his desk from wall to ceiling, that if it were ever to get noticed that there's an active shooter, his first was to push that into the door, because it opened into his classroom. Good luck moving that. But then well, screw you, school district, because I can't have a window. Well, here's a ladder going into the ceiling, and you actually climb up into the bar joist ceiling from
Which
it.
is brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, God bless them for that. That's great. Because, you know, you're taking care of those that you have responsibility for. And and there's lots of things you just can't take away run. And then you prepare for the other 2 options. And do the best you can with it. So I like that. I'm going to steal that one.
Yeah.
That's a good
Yeah.
one.
There you go.
I like Run. Run is a good.
Right.
It really is. And I've
It's
been in.
kind of my favorite.
Can I have a question about a scenario that
Yeah.
I've spent the last 6 years working on college campuses.
Yep.
And I run event spaces, concert halls. This happened to me while I was down south at UW Platteville. What was reported, a student pulled the fire alarm in the admin building. And when they got questioned by the police, they said they saw someone loading a weapon in the bathroom.
Yep.
So they pulled the the fire alarm in the admin building, which is right next to the concert hall. We were preparing for a show, didn't know what happened. Like, campus didn't know what happened, and all of a sudden just people are flooding into our building because everyone's coming out of the admin building. And then
Wait, if there's a fire alarm, why are they going from one building to another?
I don't know. It's just what happened.
Do they not know how fire works?
Far enough away. Thankfully, most state contract buildings are brick and concrete. But that's what happened. And there were only 2 professional staff, myself and the other theater director, were in there, and we're both looking at each other like we don't know what to do.
Right.
There's people standing outside. There's people telling us it's a fire. There's people telling us it's a shooter. And we're sitting there like, I guess we're gonna lock the doors.
Which is the worst idea in a fire.
Right. Well, yes, we knew our building was not on fire.
It's another building, so you're good.
Concert halls are heavily fire suppressed. If there was smoke in my building, my stage would have dumped 40,000 gallons of water in a minute. We have
water's terrible.
Right.
You should
That
not
sounds
use
like
water.
what-
it's a water curtain in case any of the soft goods go up. But I would have known if my building was on fire. I'd be swimming out. But that was
It's a
really what
pool
happened. Like, that was all we were told. It took forever for police to come through. I was in the building when police searched us because we were calling everyone that had tickets to the event, telling them not to show up.
Sure.
Everything got canceled. It was super fun to be on the business end of an AR-15. You just sit there and put your hands in plain sight.
It's sobering.
Very much so.
Yes.
Very much so. And so I'm just curious, like, what should have been our response, given limited information?
You know, I think that's a good example because it's never clean and easy. It's always confusing and chaotic. But that's why you go back to the principles of run and then hide and fight. So, you know, if you hear there's a shooter, I think I'd encourage people to keep moving. It's hard to hit a moving target, and chances are there's just one shooter. So just creating distance is always a good thing, and spreading out. Like, I encourage businesses, if when their plans, don't do the same thing you do for a fire drill. You have a meetup spot somewhere. You keep spreading out, keep creating distance. And the nice thing is, within 3 to 5 minutes, and I'm not sure what your experience was, but usually 3 to 5 minutes, anywhere within a relatively populated area in our country, you're going to have law enforcement response. Because unlike Columbine, which they did state of the art at the time, they did a perimeter, but they don't do it anymore. So first person there is going to deal with it. And if they're alone, they're going to deal with it alone. Like the St. Cloud stabbing attack. There was in the mall up there, and this off-duty officer just took care of business on his own. So that's how. How long was it for you? Just out of curiosity.
Probably 30 minutes.
Oh, 30. Wow.
It was long. Yeah, it was 15, 20 minutes before we heard the word shooter go around.
Oh, okay. So it didn't. Okay.
I don't know. Again, the main access to the admin building is through a different, like, there's a physical barrier between our building and that.
I think if
access.
you hear there's a fire in another building, you did the perfect thing. You just wait and then keep people from coming because it ain't going to be happening. And then, but when you hear shooter, then you switch gears. You know, and these things are chaotic, and you don't lose anything if you would have said, "Okay, everybody, keep moving. Let's go. Let's not cluster together." You know, it's all good. It's just a dry run then.
So a shooter situation in like a college like that is like, instead of like keeping everybody in one location, you're saying so like go home. It's
Just
like
go away.
Yeah,
Go
like,
away and
get in your car. Like,
yeah, normally within 3 to 5 minutes, if it is a shooter situation, people are calling 911. Law enforcement will be there in mass, and they will find you. And they're gonna have plenty of people showing up that's gonna find folks. And then I would have you not go home, but be close enough where you may provide information, or your parents or somebody's gonna worry you're dead. So you want to be able to check in with somebody, but go far enough away that you won't be in a threatened area. And I teach people the difference between concealment and cover. So once you get far enough away, you feel safe. You find something that is cover, not concealment. Concealment blocks you from view, which is great.
but it doesn't block you from a bullet.
Exactly. Won't stop around. So good example is a car. If you tuck down in a car, tuck down behind the engine block, that'll stop around. The trunk won't. So get far enough away where you feel safe. Find some cover. Tuck down.
Are you saying the movies are wrong and a car door will not stop rounds?
No, you don't have unlimited ammo. Too.
I know for a fact that a 9mm will go in one door but will not come out the other.
But it will go in one door.
Usually it definitely goes through one door.
You know, it won't be the one time it goes all the way through.
Yeah.
So.
That's true.
Yeah, I have luck of the Irish to the fullest.
Gordon would get shot at once and end up with 3 holes.
Oh man, speaking of luck of the Irish, did you hear about Londonderry this weekend?
Oh yeah.
They had a car bombing for the first time in 20 years.
Jesus.
Yeah, the troubles are starting up again. That's not a fucking joke. Like,
No.
I
heard that.
yeah, I didn't mean to bring this serious conversation down, but
Because it was really light and airy.
I know. Well, I mean, no, but it's a legitimate thing that,
it is.
and, like, we do have some overseas listeners, and this is a thing that they could definitely be.
And here's the problem nowadays, maybe to spin off of that, is it's so easy to make something to go boom. It's just so easy, and you just gotta go online. And anybody can, when I was a kid, a little older than you guys, you'd have to find an anarchist cookbook or old Army field manuals or the kid in the neighborhood missing fingers, right? You couldn't do it on your own.
Or all 3.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say what I did or didn't do.
It's an off-air discussion.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta have your fingers, so
Yeah. I'm not But nowadays it's so easy. So you see it as an add-on, and it's really frightening. And so law enforcement now, they train, not they, but how to deal with IEDs. And it's something that is in the forefront of our mind. And so we saw, you see it there. It's easy to see it here, so, and people keep learning from each other, and it's just getting so easy. And so that's frightening.
Now, I used to work for a big retail company just over in Woodbury, and they had a code system set up for if there was a fire, it was this code. If it was a missing child, it was this. That in court, all the managers would have a walkie-talkie, or certain staff did, and then also the PA system. I mean, is that something that you ever address, or is that more
I hate codes?
Okay.
And then people are getting away from it. That was once again state of the art. We keep learning, which is great. Wisdom. We keep getting more wisdom. We're applying it. Because the nice thing about an active shooter situation, or I like targeted violence is a better word. Sometimes it's a knife, like in St. Cloud or IED, but in these type of mass killing situations, the bad guy knows what he's doing, so you're not surprising him, and so you want to use plain language whenever possible and get that information out to as many people as possible so they can decide how to survive for 3 to 5 minutes until law enforcement arrives.
Are you not worried about a panic situation with the general public, or is that a thing that we've realized that doesn't matter?
What's more dangerous? Somebody with a weapon trying to kill people, or people running? I think the person with the weapon, if there's a legitimate threat, somebody identifies it, then I say get it out there.
Okay.
And let people decide how to survive for a few minutes. So you don't want them you gotta give them that ability to save their lives. And a good example of this, there's a big tower in one of the downtown here in the cities, and what they have a nice luxury where they have a secure security area where they have cameras, and so somebody in that security staff is in there monitoring things, and so when there's an incident, they're trained to say, active shooter, 4th floor, if you can run, if you can't hide, and then update people. So people have the knowledge then to figure out what they're going to do for a few minutes. So, and colleges are a good example too, because now they have the text alerts that they have to have. And so they can put out a text. There's a shooter in Miller Hall. Run if you can run, hide if you can't. So it gives them the knowledge and to know which way to go. So it gives as much information out as possible, and then let people survive for that few minutes.
So I'm just kind of a random question, and you might know this too. Colleges, do they do test alerts with those systems, or is it...
Yes.
So is it one of those things where people will start, kind of like fire alarms? Nobody really listens to a fire alarm anymore.
It's, from my experience, one, it depends on the campus.
Okay.
Everything depends, even within the same system. Every campus is different. And it really depends on who manages the system. Like, locally, the IT department manages it, and it's really, really good.
Okay.
It's obnoxiously good because they test it every 2 weeks.
What about Hawaii?
Long live Kafruitlu.
Well, no. You remember the tech system in Hawaii that went haywire in January?
Oh, yeah.
I missed that by a week.
ICBMs
Oh, really? Yeah, okay.
incoming.
So luckily I missed that by a week. It would have been a bad day.
Yeah. Oof. I forgot about that. Thank you.
Yep.
And they test the different parts of it, because some of it is pushed by, some of them are weather related, and those get pushed by the local, whatever the federal response is. Some of them are on campus.
No, I get a lot of these alerts on my phone. And I'm just swipe.
Yeah. And some, depending, the campus ones are actually pretty good because they'll follow up. Our campus again, it'll hit your email, your text message, and whatever other source of contact that you've given it. So that's what suddenly when it's corroborating itself.
Okay, yeah, then you pay attention a little.
And I think if it said start with this is not a test.
Yeah.
There's a shooter. I think that's going to get people's attention.
Yeah.
If you get a percentage of people at least, that's going to start moving
that's
folks.
better. Yeah.
Yep. We did have an incident in town.
Oh, a few years ago, yeah.
Yeah. There was a shooting off campus. There's a lot of misinformation, and it took campus a while to actually respond to it because it was in the evening.
Sure.
And then when on-campus staff, because several of the buildings are open late and run by students, when they contacted campus police, they were basically told, we're dealing with the situation, but we can't give you any information about it. And then it was several hours later.
You know, a bunch of people just came down to the bars that night.
Yeah, well, there was that, and it was people were flocking to different buildings, and some people were like, "Oh my God, we're sheltering in place," and other people were running away.
We have a question in the chat, which is really interesting. So, in a school or office, the assumption is that most people are remote. Well, what about like a hospital, where people aren't?
That's a great, and I've worked with a lot of hospitals, and it's all about training ahead of time.
Okay.
And so there's going to be folks in a hospital that can't move, but one nice thing is if there's folks with medical training, if they can get out and survive, they can come back in quickly to triage and help folks. So that's one advantage to surviving. And there's going to be like, we talk about operating rooms or people that can't, but if you can know that ahead of time, you can engineer the door in such a way that you got a pretty good chance that nobody's getting, and once again, it's 3 to 5 minutes. You got to survive. Within 12, throughout, everything's pretty much done, but between the 5 minutes and the 12 minutes, probably law enforcement is actively engaging the shooter. So you plan more aggressively ahead of time. Other people I work with is nursing homes, which is horrifying, right? And you can't put that on somebody. You have to stay. So it's, once again, it's a lot of moral dilemmas come up in these things I talk about. So you will encounter moral dilemmas, and you have to decide what you're going to do with it. Example, I train folks that if you're leaving a dangerous area, there's active violence going on, and you find somebody that's wounded, it's best not to putz around with them, treat them for shock or move them, because somebody comes around the corner, there's 2 targets. Instead, you calm them down, say, we're coming back for you, lay still, play dead. But if they're bleeding out, that's a moral dilemma, and you have the knowledge and ability to save their life, you got to decide. Nobody can decide that but you. So hospitals are full of those dilemmas. Teachers, have those dilemmas. It's just you have to embrace it. And
for Joe Schmo, is it save yourself? If you don't know that you don't, or that you have the ability to save somebody, just get out and come back?
It's a moral dilemma. I don't know. I can't tell you. Everybody's going to have to think, when you encounter folks. I encourage people not to get out if they can. Another thing that's nice is getting as many people out of the building as possible makes it easier for law enforcement to more quickly get in and identify the threat.
Okay.
Because they don't have to deal with you. If everybody stays in place and clusters together and things, law enforcement will be coming in aggressively, but they're going to encounter a lot of people, and they don't know if you're the bad guy. And people will be chaotic.
So you want to help them out too by
getting out of the way, and then calmly dealing with when they come across you. Eventually, giving you information or listening to their commands. But
along that vein, what do you do with a privately armed citizen?
Okay,
what's your thought?
I'll give you my thoughts on that, because I get this one all the time. So I'm ready for this.
I figured.
All right.
So I'm not going to tell you if you should or shouldn't, but I'm going to say there's 4 rules I have for people to do concealed carry, and you got to kind of think through these things because it's such a heavy. I don't like when people do it flippantly. You have to go into it very knowledgeably and think about it. Number 1 is plan on getting shot in the back, because what do you look like if you pull out your weapon, which you're legally allowed to have, and you save life. You're saving lives. You're engaging a bad guy. That's great, but plan on the first responder or another concealed carry person shooting you, right? Because you aren't what you look like. I mean, I don't know if you can see me or not, listening, but I look like a social worker more than anything else. I always have, always will. I never look like a cop, but carried a gun for 20 years, and I knew if I engaged a bad guy, which I wouldn't hesitate, I got a good chance of getting drilled in the back. And we lose law enforcement. That happens, not all the time, but it definitely does happen. We've lost agents that way. But it's nobody's fault. You just got to kind of own that. And number 2 is you better prepare and train like law enforcement does. I'm not happy with how concealed carry, I think it's Minnesota, once every 5 years.
Once every 5 years.
You shoot at a stacked target, you don't have to hit it. From what I've heard. And which is crazy. So
you just have to be able to fire the weapon.
Yeah. Oh, Wisconsin didn't, until I think recently, didn't require
didn't even have to fire. Yeah. No, I
thought that was only if you had, like military training or hunter safety, or no? Oh,
no.
Okay.
No. The official stance of Blinded Studios is you should not conceal carry, and
I won't go there. I'm going to leave it open.
No, I'm saying our official stance as a company is.
But if you do, you train, and I know people that aren't law enforcement. They train very aggressively and strictly and do a great job, and they're ready for it. And sometimes that training includes working out physically. you know, especially as you age and things and compensating for different things. So you train like law enforcement, so you won't be a problem, be more of a help.
Right.
Number 3 is you better have or a good insurance policy, you know, because you will be sued. You know, say you engage the worst bad guy ever and save a school bus full of kindergartners.
That guy's gonna sue the shit out of you.
Well, he's dead.
If he's dead, his family will
sue. Yeah, exactly. You stole my thunder there, but yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's what
I
was
didn't
saying.
mean to.
They will sue you. It is what it is. So you need a good insurance policy. And I heard one instructor, which I thought was brilliant, said wrap a $20,000 bill around the barrel of your gun and just plan on spending it if you pull it out.
Yeah, I just said there's a indoor gun range up at my place, and they do conceal and carry classes up there. But post class this last month, well, I suppose still January, they had a lawyer who specializes in if you are involved, like you legally can conceal and carry, and you were involved in a shooting. You can come in, and that's what his shtick is. But you can come in, and he did 2 hours of just people asking questions. You know, hey, what about this? What about that? What about the other thing? And I happened to pop in and just kind of sit down. I didn't ask any questions, but just to listen. It's like, shit.
You pull the trigger, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Well, that's what.
It's sobering.
Yeah.
It's sobering, and it should be. It should be.
Absolutely.
And when I was in the FBI, I carried my own policy. I carried a liability policy in case the Department of Justice wasn't in scope of my employment that day when something happened. It just made me sleep better at night having that policy.
And do a lot of agents do that?
Yeah, almost everybody. I believe. It just gives a little comfort in case
Right.
something happens.
Because you're never truly off the job.
No, you're always on duty.
Okay.
Always on duty.
If I can backtrack just a few questions, going back, that moral compass, if you will. I mean, when you're doing these training seminars with, whether it's a school or hospital or whoever, the nursing home, do you get a lot of people saying, "Well, what about this?" That more, those people pushing back, if you will.
Yeah, I love it when they do. I mean, it makes it a lot more interesting. And colleges probably get more of that from professors, but love that interaction back and forth with folks.
Damn you, water heater!
Sorry for those of you turning into the first time. We have a water heater down here that we have no control over.
It is the nemesis.
It is.
Fair enough. But the people that that struggle with it, like something linear. If A happens, you do B, and then C. It doesn't work like that. Give you general principles that you lock in ahead of time to be safe, and then you apply them as best you can. I'm giving you some cards to play. You deal with the hand you're dealt, but you have some good cards to play. And so, run is the ace. You always play that if you can. And if you can't, then you do hide. Then you do fight, and kind of equip people with that. And prepares you ahead of time as you think through it. Because the worst thing to do is have the first time you thought about it is when suddenly an alarm goes off in a building, you see something happening, something breaks bad around you.
And so, just for example, if we hear down at Blind Ninja Studios where your first time clients and you're having your first...
We only have one egress, we're fucked.
Yeah.
But you can barricade it well. So you plan ahead. You have improvised weapons. It's all good.
Yeah.
I mean,
We have Molotovs, we're good.
Burn it down on top of us.
I'll bring my apple pie down here. How would you walk us through your first meeting, if you will?
It depends what clients want. I mean, every situation is so different. But I'm always going to encourage people to train the staff is the key. Because you can train physical things, but your threat can still be internal. It could be one of you three, right?
Damn it, Gordon.
I'm just saying. I'm not saying who, but...
Gordon calls me Grandpa one more fucking time.
Oh, but Ben, I like you. Don't shoot me. Here's this candy bar.
Casey makes the good beer.
But the best way to save lives is to train as many people as possible. So that's what I'm encouraging people to do. And I just did that recently. We were working on setting something for the spring when I get back, and so we're talking about that. And we're going to look through the facility. So I think that's a great thing. Just walk through together and get some ideas. Maybe talk about doing some tabletops with them was an idea. But my thing is to encourage as many people as possible to be trained. And one thing I like to train too is managers and supervisors, because they can be real key in this, because if they have knowledge about what's going on in their staff's lives, they can pick up on threats ahead of time. Because another thing I like to talk about is there's prevent indicators of violence, and we should be looking out for those. So the FBI does a lot of studies after the fact when one of these situations happens, and most likely the person's dead. So it's like a psychological autopsy, basically. And then look for themes, and there's definitely themes that come up, and so you can see things in people's life and maybe get ahead of a problem. And it happens. Things get stopped. People start checking boxes. People get nervous, and probably the best example of that, the people that are best at it, is colleges. Because every fall, a bunch of crazy 18-year-olds show up, right?
Yes.
And there's a percentage of those folks that shouldn't be there because they're not safe for themselves or others. And so colleges have a threat advisory committee or team or whatever they call it, with a group of decision makers, and usually including a good forensic psychologist, that can come together quickly and make a decision what to do to little Susie or little Johnny and how to keep people safe.
Does River Falls have one of those?
They do have a response team.
No, but do they have the forensic psychologist?
I do not know that.
Okay.
I know they have a psychologist. I don't know if they're
okay.
a forensic psychologist.
Psychologists with experience. I like forensic psychology. They're kind of the state of the art when you deal with this. I just worked with a college recently, and they called in. You know, there's people that will do it over the phone, even locally, where they'll consult with you, and it was a great experience. And so you look at all these different interview everybody that, because the nice thing is talk about all the different people that deal with the student or deal with the individual, because you get different views of them, and people will only see a part, and then get the whole picture, and then together try and decide what you could do ahead of time.
So you're talking about like dealing with management and stuff like that. So if Joe Schmo listening to this episode is like, hey, I feel like we should implement this in my office, but I don't have a lot of clout, is there any advice that you can give them to implement, or something to tell their employer to be hey?
Yeah, that's a good one. And so I have a speech for that.
Okay.
So it's the if something breaks bad, if somebody breaks bad in your business, in your organization, whatever it happens to be, plan on whoever's in charge of it the next morning. The news station will be on your front lawn. You know, it'd be the Channel 9 moment. You know, you're having a bad day when you go out to your car and Channel 9's, you know, 11 or whoever, you know.
UPN.
Say around.
But that will happen because it's a big accident. People lose lives. They're going to be talking to you, and you want to have an answer. Well, we've prepared for this. We did the best we can. We limited the losses. We have EAP ahead of time. You know, setting up. So you have these things to talk about. And the other thing is you will be sued as an organization, right? And so wouldn't it be nice on the stand to be able to say, well, we trained for this. We prepared. We did, you know, state of the art. We did the best we can. You know, we saved lives because of it. Versus I did nothing. And you know you're going to have employees that are not going to be real happy, and they'll be more than happy to spread the news that you didn't do anything about it. Or the ones that said, hey, I warned them, and they didn't do anything. And there's no downside with training people to be safer. And if anything does happen, it'd be a horrible situation to be in, to be able to explain to people's families why you decided not to do it.
Well, and the last thing you want to be is that woman in her moo-moo in the trailer park being like, that tornado came through, we had no idea. Like,
anybody got time for that? Now, you know, we mentioned hospitals. You mentioned, you know, the company, you know, 4th floor. This is going on. You know, what about small businesses? You know, the mom and pop shops. You know, I mean, can they reach out to you and work with you?
Yeah, and the nice thing is, I'm affordable because I have low overhead. My office looks a little bit like this. You know, I work on
very well put together. You mean?
So yes,
thank you, Gordon.
Color coordinated.
So
we have colors.
Low overhead, and it doesn't cost much to train people. There's some really easy things you can do and prepare ahead of time. It's just applying that wisdom that's out there already, and there's no downside to it at all. And even you go online, there's one of the videos I like the best to prepare for Run, Hide, Fight was filmed in Houston. It's about 7 or 8 minutes long. It's a really good Department of Justice or Homeland Security paid for it. But when you search online for Run, Hide, Fight, look for the one filmed in Houston. It's about 7, 8 minutes. Really good illustration.